Josh, thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure, as always, to talk to you. I think you started Roadkill Records in 2015, but at that time you couldn't really tell me what you were up to, except that something big was on the horizon. Can you take us back to when you first decided to form a record label?
Before the Roadkill Records idea came about, there was already like a group of musicians who were very used to being associated with each other and playing with each other regularly. So it wasn't really a big step to releasing a cassette compilation under a label banner.
Did you have any particular obstacles that you weren't aware of when you jumped into this mad business?
Yeah, there were a bunch of obstacles that I had to kind of wrap my head around. I already worked in music for my day job, so I already did PR, so I knew that aspect of it very well. But I think it really helped me when Chris came on board, who's my label partner, who's in Sly Persuaders, Chris Blake. He sort of helped out with a lot of those things that I found more difficult. So he had much more of a head on him about engineer kind of aspects of what it's like to put out a record. So, being in charge of making sure that everything actually sounded good. Because to me, everything sounds good. I like lo-fi music anyway, but like I think for Chris, he's like, well, a lo-fi garage rock band it doesn't have to sound like shit. Like it can still sound brilliant.
Can you tell us about some of the early releases?
Yeah, so the first thing that we did was the compilation. So the cassette compilation, which featured a whole host of bands that we had worked with who had played for my nights, and a couple that hadn't played for us that I was just fans of who agreed to be involved. And that was brilliant, huge success, sold out instantly. Then we had our first vinyl release. That was the 7-inch with the Sly Persuaders and Dead Wardian. So we did a split 7, and then we did the Sly Persuaders debut album. So those 3 releases were really important. I wanted to make sure that initially we weren't just sort of sticking to cassettes, and that we could actually put our money where our mouth is really, and make sure that the early releases were vinyl and that we were taking it seriously. And I think that a vinyl has that kind of look about it.
Tell me more about that third member who delivers the branding. When it comes to iconography, it's all Jake Griffith's work.
It was always me and Jake. Like, we lived together at the time on Holloway Road, and he'd done posters and stuff for hardcore gigs before, and we both really liked the same things in terms of horror movies, and in particular like George A. Romero and Stephen King. We had those in common, and so I kind of wanted to look a little bit like grindhousey, kind of pulpy, kind of cult like kind of vibe. There was no one else really. It was always going to be Jake. Before people really knew what Roadkill was, they would recognize the poster by association, because it was bold and it was graphic and it was sometimes violent and disgusting, but like it meant that people kind of remembered us every time. And then bands would get in touch with us because they loved the artwork, and people would get in touch even before they knew really much about the music.
Tell us about the current roster of artists and what it is in particular that draws you to working with them.
It has always got to be and will always be about the songs. It is also about the people, I think, and the right kind of people with the right outlooks and the right work ethics. At the moment, the roster is only 5 artists. It's only Projector, Sly Persuaders, Muertos, Enemy of the People, and After London, who are all amazing and astounded every time I see them. They just, all 5 of those bands just keep getting better and better and keep writing bigger hits after bigger hits. And I honestly believe that these bands should be big, popular bands, and that's essentially what it's got to be about, taking the music that you believe in and try and put it in front of as many ears and eyes as possible.
How do you feel? I mean, I know how you feel about having split gender lineups. You don't necessarily want to push like this whole mask kind of thing. Is that something that you moved towards even more so in the current day? I mean, was there a time when you weren't doing that? How did that become more of a thing?
Definitely, the more that these things are talked about, the more everyone thinks about them. I tried to focus on that as much as possible. If you look back at the very, very early days, there's always been inclusivity there, and we've always tried hard to represent every sort of aspect and every kind of person. I have put on shows which are all dudes, but I'm not proud of that. That's not something that we strive for. And likewise, we've put on shows which are predominantly women. So it's something that's always mindful. always try and reach that, but always at the same time try and do better as well. I think that's important, and not just between men and women, but people from all walks of life. So always looking out for those and making sure that every kind of minority is well represented is something that I think all promoters should look at, and just be more mindful of generally.
Final question. Obviously, we're in the midst of an international pandemic. I mean, how have you had to deal with, well, shows being cancelled?
Yeah, it's been a big sort of spanner's been thrown in the Roadkill Records sort of works. I think, like, in terms of innovation, we're talking to people. We're going to continue doing the podcast, which we're going to try recording for the first time next weekend. And that will be obviously very similar to what you and I are doing now, trying to work that out. The Slys are doing their own kind of stripped back, like bluesy covers of some of their tracks that they're working on the studio now. Projector are doing a series of covers, which they're doing acoustically. D is working on their sort of solo work, and as well as that, we have a new remix coming. Enemy are sharing Simpsons memes, so I'll have to find out what they're doing. God, the list could go on, but just trying to fill our time with as much stuff as possible, I guess.
Yeah, so business as usual then, really. I mean, I don't get the sense that you really truly had the impact in a negative way as, say, other labels would have to see, because you do a lot of stuff just from home.
Yeah, the pandemic would have to be a hell of a lot worse to stop us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Josh. You're eloquent, and
thank you.
It's fantastic to talk to you. So thank you, and have a wonderful rest of lockdown. Hopefully it will end soon.
Cheers.